Hi, everybody. Welcome to our another session of Taking Hills Foundation Tech Talks. So this particular talk, even just from my close circle, a lot of people are a bit anxious with what's currently happening with COVID-19, looking at the job market, as well as just trying to find themselves to see that, okay, with a lot of jobs being lost, what can actually, as an individual, can you do to actually find yourself participating in this sort of weird type of pandemic that's happening, and also just what does it mean as an individual. So today I have Anne. Hi Anne, how are you?
Great, thanks to yourself, Nintendo. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for accepting this invitation. I'm gonna fix myself again. It's Anene.
No, it's cool. Either is fine. I've got both on everything anyway.
All right. So I just want to put up a disclaimer for everybody watching that the opinions and the views expressed in this talk are those of us, the speakers. They do not purport to reflect the opinions or the views of the companies or entities we work for. Now, with that being said and done, right, today's session is about the impact of COVID-19 on the SA job market. Right. And I think when we actually think about the SA job market at the moment, it's a bit of a touchy situation, given that there's so many people who are actually unemployed at this very moment. And we got people who, I read an article that said about 4 million job losses are coming up, that are going to be coming up. And we've been seeing a lot of companies as well. People are retrenching. Some people's jobs are becoming obsolete. And I think it was a very important topic, given that us as, we need to find ourselves involved in a lot more spaces. So I think it's very important that the youth has this conversation, which is what led us from Taking Hills Foundation to actually say, let's have a topic like this, get someone like Anene, who's an expert in this field, to actually, give us some more advice, give us some more insights on this particular topic. So, Anene, from your side?
Yeah, so perhaps as an introduction to myself, I am a technical recruiter. I work specifically for a software development consulting company, and my main focus is within the tech space. Coming from that, my background is also in edtech, so very much in the space where we start seeing the need for a heightened education. And I think the main focus that has come through in my research and preparing for this topic has really been that recruitment and our job space has been impacted in a very interesting and a little bit of a scary way, but it's not the end. So when you think of COVID as something that has impacted our job market, as an entity or a company, what typically happens is the first thing that you do when there is a crisis on the horizon, whether that is a pandemic in this case, or whether it is financial fiscal concerns that you might have, the first thing that typically happens is a company will halt recruitment. And that is a way for them to obviously cut costs and keep things sort of protected internally. Charity usually starts at home. And I think that resonates with what people experience as well. This is an interesting time in the world because from a South African side, we don't have the statistics of what has been the impact so far. The initial research that's come out of the US has been that, especially within the tech industry, there have been a lot of job cuts. It does, however, bring forward a very different approach to things. So we essentially see a high unemployment rate, a heightened need for us to address diversity issues. We really need to start coming to terms with the fact that suddenly all of us can work anywhere. So talent could be anywhere in the world. And we need to operate with a new sense of sort of fiscal responsibility around that. So in a nutshell, at least what has happened is that every industry is different, but we do need to start paying attention to making ourselves moving ourselves into a position that is the best possible chance for employment. And it's not all gloom and doom out there. while companies typically will pause recruitment for a little bit, it won't stay that way. And it gives us a chance to sort of pivot and position ourselves in a better sense. So I know that the information out there can be scary, and for a lot of people, things are a bit scary now, but we're in a very interesting position where if you ever wanted to pivot your career or change, that was the perfect time to do that. You have a blank slate, and there is a lot of opportunity to go forth. But I think that's just the starting point to this as well.
Yeah. No, definitely. So I'm hearing you saying that right now is actually a good opportunity for us to pivot, right? And I totally agree, because I think we are given sort of some time also to try and find ourselves as well, because I'm seeing a lot of people are actually starting to upskill themselves in things that you found out that it was their passion before, but because okay, we need a job, because we need to pay bills, we need to do this and that. But a lot of people now are moving into a space where they can upskill themselves to actually do something that they're more passionate about. And I think one of the upsides of this pandemic is that it's allowing us to sort of be still and sort of look around in terms of doing a self-introspection to say, do I actually love what I'm doing? Because I mean, now you don't necessarily have to be going into work. We don't have to be seen on your computer typing or whatever it is. It's now up to you to see that you do the task that you need to do. And I think a lot of what is happening now, we're finding ourselves saying, okay, do I actually like what I'm doing? Because now you're in your own space, you're in your comfortable own space, your own home, and now you have to do something that you'll find you're not necessarily happy about. So I really like that point you raised in terms of us pivoting and finding ourselves to actually do something even different. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm just going back with the job market right now in SA. So do you have any insights on that? What is currently happening? Are we in South Africa? Is there more recruiting? Is there less recruiting? Which industries and all of that?
So I think I can only speak from my experience in the sense that I'm very tech focused. There might be some variety in terms of other people's experiences. And what happened at the start of the lockdown, obviously as a result of the fact that, first thing that stops in a panic is recruitment, is unfortunately it hit the recruitment industry really hard. Over 70% of recruiters lost their income. There was a massive scramble within the industry to say, but what now? And it kind of felt a little bit like the end of the world, but it also kind of didn't. So what happened is we have amazing work being done by people like Greg Savage. He is a true expert. He's been a recruitment expert for over 40 years. And what he looks at is how businesses operate and how to really help them out in that sense. And his whole thing was that this is an opportunity again for us to reflect and revisit our processes and for us to work together better. The industry was in dire need of a reform. People like Vanessa Ross, which I highly recommend following on social media, and Jane Moores actually took time to start putting together the industry so that we could look at better ways to help our candidates and to help people who've been impacted. So amongst that, there were initiatives that happened whereby candidates that typically we wouldn't have seen shared between different agencies and industries are now being shared. The focus is the best possible way to help people. We're all in this together. So what has now started happening is as companies have also started coming to terms with the fact that this is not going away, our life is still going to go on, projects still need to happen, things still need to be delivered. We're seeing the startup movement into a different way of working, but the recruitment engines are firing up again. And I see them kicking up quite quickly. What is important to note is that for a lot of people, this has forced us into the fourth industrial revolution in a lot of ways. And it sort of reminds me a little bit of back in the day before, the industrial revolution happened, there were these guys who would walk and they would have to light the lamp Every day they'd walk with their little candle and they'd light all the street lamps.
Yeah.
And then obviously as electricity became popular, they weren't there anymore. And it was a big help for them because now my job's gone. But maybe this is a similar situation for us. It's a chance for us to find something that's a bit better. There's amazing work being done by a few people within our industry. And I mean, from our side, the guys at RL Labs actually had such a nice story of how back when their founder needed to find employment, he worked and tried his very best out of varsity to try and find some form of employment. Growing up in Khayelitsha, there wasn't very much. And what happened is he got a scholarship to go to university. And they asked him, what do you want to study? And he looked at the brochure and said, no, he thinks it sounds like the right thing to do because it's all about networking. And I mean, he's been at a lot of youth events, so he's good at networking, so he can make friends quickly. And he walked into this thing completely without knowing how much it would change his life. And as a background to that, he ended up building this concept of making hope contagious and helping people in the tech space to really get familiar with how technology can change their lives and improve their lives. So yes, the engines are starting up, but now is probably the best time to start and sit down, take a look at where do you actually want to go. Is the company that you want to affiliate yourself with doing the stuff that actually makes you happy? Is it going to be something that is going to resonate with your personal values? Because you have to look at your colleagues for at least 8 hours a day. If you hate them, it's going to be hard. And at the end of the day, is this something that you can see yourself growing in? It is a job. There's no such thing as a utopia. We tell that to our candidates all the time. But with that being said, it should give you that sense of pride, whether that is looking at it and saying, you know what, I'm really, really passionate about building something out of nothing. Maybe I want to be an architect, or maybe you're someone like in the space where you feel that you just want to make a user experience the best possible because you had this awkward call with an insurer and it really sucked and you have a better way to do it. Think about those sorts of real-world applications and how you can pivot into that. You'll see as the job market starts coming up, there's going to be a lot of changes in the next couple of months, not only with COVID, but also because the POPI Act and our information protection is now going to be enforced. So there's going to be some changes, and don't be scared. Just have an open mind, but be very, very curious about how you go about this. There's a lot of opportunity within this space.
Yeah. No, definitely. So you have touched on a little bit of how COVID-19 has affected recruitment in HR. So that now that the engines are firing up, you guys are starting again. So is there a specific direction that or mandate that you are looking for now that the engines have started firing up? Where is this car going?
Again, big one for different industries might be different. I think if you speak to someone who does medical recruitment, for example, they have not stopped. They are in overdrive. It's a different ballgame. From my side, we have seen a massive uptake in project work in the sense of clients coming to us to build again because they realize that those things they put on the back burner can't wait because they still need to happen. So we've seen a massive uptake in the industry from a software development perspective going into cloud engineering. That has been complemented by the fact that the Microsoft certifications as we know them as of June have lapsed. So you can now go and do your certifications within the Azure framework for free. You do pay for your exams, but that has sort of come up now from a perspective of pivoting everybody into the cloud and sort of aligning with that overarching cloud goal that we've all been talking about but now have to do. Along with that, there's also been a massive uptake within the data analytics and data science fields. There is an immense amount of value for companies to be able to understand the information that they are generating. I think from my side, I'm also going to hazard a guess that based off of these legislative changes, we're going to see cybersecurity uptake like we have not seen before. And the reasoning behind that really is the fact that, firstly, if we are to be more remote, we need to be sure we're protected. And a lot of companies, while they have implemented some measures, we have seen data breaches in a number of spaces, the Post Bank being an example, just last week. So I do foresee this being a gap and something for people to look into. And there's a lot of space for growth within this, because most of these tools, we are lucky enough in the tech sector to not need a degree for. Yes, you'll get certified and you'll have certifications, but your knowledge is mostly freely available to you. But that's on might be different for someone else.
So you did touch on a lot of the skills that are being sought out by employees amidst this pandemic. And I think cybersecurity, I myself, when I find myself in cybersecurity, because so many jobs that are actually being posted, even just recruiters giving you a call to say, do you have any certification in cybersecurity? And I think that it's due to the fact that now that we're all working from home, my security to my fiber connection or my Wi-Fi connection is as strong or secure as the ones that we had when we were in our workplaces. So now we see with our work laptops, we're working on our network that we've connected for work, but it's my home connection, and I didn't necessarily have it secure. So there are a lot of breaches actually happening now, because I think even the scams, the phishing scams, they're becoming even more now. As much as we put the information out there to say that don't click on, don't do that, they're also finding newer ways to actually try and get themselves through our networks and get the information. So definitely, I know with cybersecurity, even just from my own experience, is one that is really being sought out. And going back, even when you said data analytics and data science, I read an article that also said that even just from a government sector point of view, because right now with so much information that is coming in, there's information about the statistics of the actual COVID-19 stats, there's information coming in about vaccines, there's information coming in about this and that and this and that. And I think even just the old ways of how our government handles information, it's becoming overwhelming. So even from a government perspective, data science and data analytics is something that they're also starting to look into, because with currently happening, there's so much information overload that you can't rely on a simple method of just sitting and reading through. You actually have to now apply certain methods of actually analyzing all this data that is coming through, because we need everything in real time now, because everything is happening in real time.
Absolutely. It also took some time when we were chatting about preparing for this. And I went back and actually sat with a few of our architects and I said, look, guys, I need to know from your side. Obviously, there are soft skills that we want to see when you're talking about skills that are sought after in this space. But what are the hard skills that you wish you saw on people who are coming into the team? And this comes with the caveat of not necessarily someone who has a degree in a computer science or whatever the case is. It also comes from just a team changer or someone who's already been in the industry. And I think the big thing that comes up a lot is people's curiosity to stay current with their technology. So wherever you find yourself, please take the time to subscribe to the community events, join the meetups, join the tech foundations, get involved, because you will quickly see if there is a niche that you haven't explored just yet. And that curiosity also flows over into the way that you interact with your team, because you're coming with fresh ideas and fresh approaches to things that haven't been implemented as yet. There's also a really nice compendium done by Stack Overflow every year. They do an annual development survey, much like our local Office Zen does, and they give you a really nice idea of up and coming technologies coming off of the platform. They've got hundreds of thousands of users that they use to sort of guide and spearhead in that. So I think from that perspective, I would recommend also just keeping a broach with, where the industry is. We might not be quite Silicon Valley fast with some of the stuff, but it doesn't stop us from knowing about them and learning about them.
Yeah, that's very true, because I think what's important is that when we keep abreast with what's happening in our current environments, whether we're in tech, whether we're in finance or whatever, it helps us also just to fill in those gaps, because there's new
Mm,
technologies that are coming in, there's new softwares coming in, and if I'm in
mm,
finance, new accounting system that's coming in that requires you to have skills to actually know how to work with that particular
mm.
accounting system. So that is some
Exactly.
good advice. Just keeping abreast to your environment, keeping abreast to your sectors and what
Mm,
is
yeah,
currently booming. Definitely.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you advise those already in the job market on their sustainability, how do they remain relevant?
Mm. Okay, that's awesome. So I took this to the team so that I could get a bit of insight from both sides of the street.
Yeah.
And from a Dariel perspective, obviously, we have a lot of people who operate within certain tech genres. Most
Yeah.
of my focus is software development focused, specifically full stack. And something that we find a lot within our framework is, especially when people apply to a role, they come in without having done the background work. So they won't have the fundamentals in place. So, for example, what will happen is someone will come in and they will have been an expert on the project that they worked on, but they
Yeah.
haven't actually applied their minds to think a little bit about the bigger picture, about, how does this project fit into the broader framework?
Yeah.
And with that being said, when you are in your job, it can be very easy for you to get comfortable. You
Mm.
know the team, you know the vibe, you know what's expected of you. And
Yeah.
for all intents and purposes, you are meeting the performance criteria. But if you are not coming in with an awareness of what's going on around you, that's the hard one. So it's always this feeling of where I'm now, am I preparing myself for the next job? Am I
Mm.
making sure that I'm taking every learning opportunity, even if
Yeah.
it sometimes feels like a bit of a tangent? Am I hungry for growth? Am I giving back to my team and listening to the guys around me?
Mm.
Or maybe if I'm working by myself, am I integrated into the community in the sense that I'm still seeing different points of view and I'm learning from different points of view?
Yeah.
It's sort of interesting. Every time we have this interaction with people, I remember a quote by Richard Feynman, and it says that at the end of a doubt and discussion are essential to progress.
Mm.
Don't accept that just because you're doing super well in your current space, that you'll be able to just move into the next one. And when you decide that you want to start putting out your feelers, let's say that you're starting to think about maybe in 6 months or so, start thinking critically about what's important to you. It's that self reflection of, is what I'm doing going to be something that fulfills what I want to do? Is it something that aligns with my goals and my values going forward? And I sometimes have this where I'll speak to someone in an interview and I always ask, when it comes to company culture, what's important to you? And people sometimes just say, okay, well, whatever. I just want a job. And while that's a valid statement, it's you need to be careful. You don't want to just accept anything because you might walk into an environment where you're not really doing much growing. You're not working in a space where you're doing much. So always think about the next job. That's
Yeah.
how you get your sustainability, because it doesn't have to be the next job in a different company. This could be the next job within your current space, and you coming with those ideas to solutions and really build around you. So that's really how you keep yourself sustainable. And I mean, obviously attitude is always there, but I think that's something that we sort of assume as a baseline, is that, we're going in with a learning mindset and we're
Yeah.
coachable and we're approachable and we're there to do things and, make stuff happen. But
Yeah.
that's from our side, at least.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because even just for me, my personal opinion on how to remain sustainable is that I tend to, if there's a specific job that I want to aspire to work in, what I do is that, because of platforms like LinkedIn, platforms like Teammate, Careers 24, we actually have
Mm,
the luxury of seeing what it takes to be in that particular position that you want to be in. So I always I always think, okay, now I'm looking to step into this area. So I'll go and I'll search a particular job that I'm looking for. And that's where I'll start looking all the stuff that I have. And then all the stuff that is left over that I don't have, then I work towards that. So that's also set a framework for me to say that, okay, this is what I aspire to be. So this is what I need to do in order to get there. You know, that's how I try and remain relevant and also just sustainable. So I have a couple of questions that have come in on my personal line.
Sure, go for it.
Let's start with one. One question says, how can we assist in incorporating this in our engagement? Oh, sorry, no. Oh, how can people already in the job market stay in the know?
Okay, in the know in the sense of your working environment, perhaps, or in the know in the sense of your skill set. I think if we look at both, when you think about your working environment, the best advice I've ever been given, period, for my working context has been to get to know your higher ups. So wherever you are, you make an effort to connect with those people. And it could be as simple as a lunch, a Zoom call, a check-in. It's very important for you to understand and build that relationship of trust with that person, because that will allow you to sort of see where things are going, and you'll be able to pick up what's going on around you a bit more. As much as possible, I'm very much not a fan of politics. I'd prefer to just be in the space where we work and we're productive. But it is important to connect with people, and to sometimes, even if that person doesn't feel like they're directly relevant to your job title, it's really helpful to just keep that relationship. In terms of staying in the know for your skill set, I think what you're doing is actually perfect. So it's sort of this, the concept is called reflective practice. It works it's mostly a teaching principle, but what you do is every couple of months you sit down with yourself, or how frequent ever you'd like to do actually, you sit down with yourself and you look at, how are things going? In terms of my performance, in terms of my skills, what do I know? How do I know what I know? Did I do training? Sit down with that list of how things are with you. And you sort of look at what has worked in the last couple of months or couple of weeks and what hasn't, and you adjust accordingly. I think doing that research and that due diligence with platforms like, LinkedIn available and like our industry, you can sit down, you can make sure that you've got your information together and that you know where you want to go. But be very honest about how you're approaching this. Sometimes it's important to say, you know what, I really thought this was going to be something that I want to do, and it really wasn't. An example we had a team lead who she was a senior developer with us. She desperately wanted to try being a team lead. And we moved her into the space, and 6 months later, she came back and said, guys, I can't deal with the people. And that was the thing that she thought she was going to enjoy the most. So it's important to have that awareness of, maybe this didn't work. And then we pivot, we fail fast, we learn fast, and we move on. I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, definitely. And then my one question here, what advice can you give as a recruiter based on your recent experience on hiring now post-COVID?
I think at this point right now, it's super important for you to make sure that your resume is up to date in the right way. Please remove your personal information. You do not need to have an ID on there. It's actually dangerous to put your ID number out there. You don't need to give someone your detailed address. Please remove things like your dependents and your religion and that sort of stuff. It's important because these are, firstly, things that scam artists can fish for and that they're big on at the moment. Your identity could be gone in a minute, but also there's big debate within the industry to remove things that could be discriminatory. There are places where outright you don't even need a photo on there. We need to know your skills. We don't want to put anything there. So make sure that you are in alignment in terms of making your profile up to date. I prefer using platforms like Canva, which are free. They're awesome for templates, but I'll send a few links as well. And then I think being involved and making sure that your LinkedIn profile is updated. So how it works is when your recruiter needs to search for a skill, they very much will look for keywords related to the job. That's usually like the baseline of something. So for example, if I'm looking for a data scientist, I might search for a data scientist and the skill Hadoop, because that's something that you use. So having that online presence makes it a lot easier for you to get visible and to get noticed. There's also a lot of value being involved with a proper recruitment agency. If you are really desperately looking, being involved with a reputable agency will allow you to get your profile out to a few places at once. OfferZen are phenomenal. They have really nice support systems in terms of giving you tech talent advice, and they are still recruiting, even though they're not recruiting for OfferZen themselves. I do think those are sort of the things where you start, but you need to make sure that you're going to a reputable agency as well. Nobody should ever, ever, ever charge you money to get a job. There's no such thing as you paying for a training fee. That is illegal. Please, guys, beg you, don't do that.
I don't think a lot of people actually being scammed, and I get it, because we're in a country right now where the unemployment rate is so high that people are really desperate. People really want to actually get a job, and there's people who are capitalizing on that, actually, where people are saying pay this amount of money to get a regular check. Or I saw one recently where they scammed them to the point where they got the job, but the job was somewhere, so they had to pay accommodation, and people actually packed their bags and paid for the accommodation and told them, we'll pick you guys up at this location, and the people just never showed up. And we've got people who actually pay accommodation. So it really is important for us how we put ourselves out there. There's a question coming in from our platform. It says, how important is it to keep your profiles online, such as LinkedIn, up to date?
If you're active in the job market, it is essential to have a brand. So think of it, and this might sound a bit strange, but think of it as if you are going to a new hairdresser, or you're going to a new area and you're moving to Cape Town, for example, you're going to a new service provider. What's the first thing that we do nowadays? We Google for this in that area. And if there's no information out there, you're not going to find that person. And if they don't have a rating or a review, you're a little bit reticent as to whether it's worth it or not. So this is the personal brand equivalent of that. So what you do is you build out your profile. LinkedIn Learning is free for the first month, but they also have phenomenal tools on their little video clips on how to make your profile stand out. It's their business, so that's their baseline. It's really helpful to help you build reputation. They've got a really cool initiative at the moment where you can add a hashtag offer help, and where your colleagues can add recommendations that are like reference letters for you, and they can vouch for your skills during the pandemic. So it's really helpful to get yourself out there. If you are in the tech space, there are a few extra caveats for your personal brand. So for example, if you are a developer, it is really helpful to have a GitHub page that is up to date, that you are contributing to. It's helpful to be involved in small projects because, again, you're just building that evidence that I am actually really good at my job. Yes, I'm being impacted by current climate, but I have all of that stuff behind me. If you're a designer, Behance is phenomenal. If you're a data scientist, you've got Kaggle. So there are a lot of these little platforms and things that you can work on, and it all just adds for you. You know, at the end of the day, worst case scenario, if you decide I found my home and my dream job and I'm off the market, all you do is you remove yourself from that list. You don't lose anything by it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Another question. So how do you as a recruiter test if someone has the skills they say they have during the recruitment process so that we move away with the people who say they claim they have a particular skill, but they don't?
Yeah. So two-way street, actually. And this is, in my experience, how most companies in the tech space do it. There will usually be a technical assessment of some kind.
Okay.
Obviously, there is a screening interview normally. What will happen is the recruiter will either call you, and also it's very important for you to ask questions during this call. You want to know what you're being signed up for. So they will ask you a little bit about your experience, explaining your project, being able to tell me how your project worked and where you fit in an like very honest and open way. That helps a lot. But then there's usually a technical assessment going afterwards, and there are a lot of platforms and tools that people use. One of the commonly used one in South Africa is IKM. IKM is a standard assessment tool. You might be asked to do something on a different platform. HackerRank actually has as well, and they actually have really nice online training for interviews. We then also do technical interviews where we actually do coding, but it's sort of a funnel. It filters down to the very end where you see it's there. That's why it's so nice if you've already got a GitHub profile and you've already got a bit of a brand, because then the guys can sort of see where you are. I can see where you are. It helps us to sort of just get a sense of what makes this person tick. Because maybe it's that you're exceptionally good in something that I can't recruit for right now, but I know that my colleague is recruiting for that, and I can pass you on to them. So that information really helps a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have a comment. It says, I think this goes back to when we were talking about online engagements. It says that if all provincial and national governments improve their online engagement systems with businesses, then we'd make adapting a lot more smoother for many businesses. And I totally agree with that comment, because our government systems are not as user-friendly as we expect them to be. I just think of, if you want to just apply for a government position, they still make use of this form. They call it as Z83 form, where you still have to fill out all your information. I have to go physically drop off my CV, attachment, and all the thing, an entire envelope. I need to go to that particular office or department to just get recognized. And I think that we also are lacking in terms of South Africa, in terms of just the basic stuff, such as provincial and national government taking on to ourselves and using proper systems that actually will enable us, even as the youth coming up, because we want things at the tip of our hands. We want to be able to apply to a job on my phone, if that's the only way I can actually do it. Because if I have to think about it, if you're somebody who's in the job market, you have to print. And if I live far, the only thing I can afford, for example, is data. And then now I have to find a plan to print. And then not only that, I need to mail, or I need to physically go drop my application off. That's definitely something that our government needs to look into, because I think that it would open up a lot of opportunities, because the more we go into the digital space, we're closing in on that unemployment gap, because we're opening another area that actually people can be hired into.
Exactly. And I think it's very interesting that you mentioned that. They are extremely cumbersome, and they're operating in this fashion that maybe worked in the 1990s but is not relevant anymore. A couple of years ago, Discovery did a really interesting graduate program. So what they did is, for all the graduates that applied, they had a data allowance and they had to record a little video, and that was it. Because we need to make things more accessible for people who are not in a position to actually get there. We need to put our best foot forward. And government at this stage, interestingly enough, they released the Universum report for employee satisfaction. And it's an annual report that's sent out, and it's part of that Best Employer Awards process as well. When you look at it, they interviewed a bunch of people who are students, and government still comes up as one of the top people that people want to work for. But government haven't exactly Like, they're not as modern as they could be, right? So it's
Yeah.
really a space where they have such an awesome opportunity. People want to do great things with it because they see the potential. But like, we
Yeah.
just need to see them stepping up their game. Please, can I not type out my entire CV and then fax you a copy of my CV and then find a carrier pigeon to do that for me? You know, that would be great.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a very valid point.
Yeah. So let me go back and see, do we have any more questions? I think we've answered all the ones that we've had. So going back to what we're still talking about. So any tips for job seekers applying for jobs during this pandemic?
Okay, so CV, we touched on. Please check in your profile. If you're really super stuck, there are also a bunch of agencies that are now doing CV writing and like they'll help you out. There's a lot of platform in terms of that. So get your profile right, get your online brand right, engage with the right people. I think it's really important. There are super, super communities and they always say people hire people. So it helps if you bring a bit of your personality to an interview, even though you're a bit nervy. Just engage and be part of that. I promise you, the right person and the right role will appreciate that. And I know it's hard, so please, job hunting is a full-time job. It is stressful. It is a whole story. Be sure to just keep yourself motivated. We are in a pandemic. It is unprecedented times. It might take a bit longer to get to the right opportunity, but if you put your brand together, you've got your message straight, you've got a really solid portfolio behind you, and you can explain your skills and you're sort of demonstrating that you are still keen and passionate and you're looking at what you're doing next, that's really a good way to do that. Also engage with the online communities. LinkedIn is a good place to do that, but it's not the vibiest place to do that. So you can also do Twitter. Twitter is actually really engaging for that. But start connecting to people that you want to work with. I think it helps to just cement that for yourself. If you do a LinkedIn profile, don't be shy to ask your boss or someone that you've moved. If you have been impacted by COVID, ask them to do a recommendation or a referral for you. It just adds that nice little bit of weight to your discussion. But that's sort of the nutshell. There are a lot of cool free tools out there as well. But
I just think on the referral side, if you were to ask your boss, I think a lot of people might find that it's daunting to ask your boss for referral, because I think that at that kind of moment you might think, okay, you're looking to switch. So how do you work?
So that you'll do in a few cases. Firstly, people, if that's a boss that you've worked with in the past, so not your current boss, maybe only once you've resigned, you can ask them for a referral. Or let's say, for example, you've been retrenched during the COVID pandemic, then absolutely, it's perfectly okay to tell them, guys, I'm in this situation, help me out. Or what I also like to do, if you interact with clients at all, ask the client when you leave the project to do that. It's a bit of a tact. Please don't go asking your boss while you're just starting to think about it. Do it when you've resigned and when you've packed up, you've handed out your laptop and, all that good stuff is done. But I think if you are someone who is actively looking because you've been retrenched or because the company have said, look, 1 January, there's your letter, it helps. But that to clarify, sorry.
So I just think now this is I'm asking this particular question, especially on the references side, right? In a utopia world, we all leave our workplaces, our bosses are happy for us, they're so grateful for us to see us go. But in actual reality, that's not always the case. Sometimes you find yourself working in a toxic environment and all you can think of is just wanting to find something better. And I think sometimes with the references part is that, do I include my boss who necessarily get along with, who could be the reason why I'm leaving? So how do we handle the references part? Is it okay for me to just add another team member, or how do we navigate as job seekers with regards to references? Because I know sometimes I don't know if it's sometimes or all the time, you as recruiters will actually go back and actually check the references and ask specific questions to the people who put down as our references. And I can imagine if I had a little squabble with the boss, I don't think they'll have the things to say about me. So how do those recruiters sift through a disgruntled boss, for example, versus somebody who just genuinely wants the person to do well?
Okay, so two things. I usually ask, why are you exploring the market? And as you go through this process with someone, typically in an agency environment, this will also happen. It will come to light if there has been a bit of tension or if something, especially if that is the sole reason you're leaving, that will come to light. And it's not a bad thing. Being honest with your recruiter is not a bad thing. Please, we need to know information to help you. But what you can do instead is to put down HR. HR will then simply confirm employment, which is really what you want to check. You want to see, has this person worked there? Has this person gone through a disciplinary process before that maybe they haven't told you about? And that sort of comes as a due diligence thing. You can just say, contact HR. If you really want a character reference, that you can pop onto a recommendation on LinkedIn and it can be a bit more personal. But it shouldn't, in an ideal world, obviously these things do happen, but in an ideal world, we don't want the fact that you maybe come from a really bad environment to impact you going forward. And you are not under an obligation to do that. You can simply say, please contact HR to confirm my employment. Some companies actually, as a policy nowadays, don't do references anymore because they don't want people to have this sort of political drama pushing forward into their future. They will simply do an email confirmation where they just say, yes, Notando was employed with us from such and such date. They left on such and such date. And in the event of there maybe being a serious problem, they'll notify you. But if there was a really serious problem, for example, a fraud incident where someone was involved in something they shouldn't have been, that will also come to light in things like later criminal checks and fraud checks, which every financial institution does. But as much as possible, you don't have to worry too much about that. If you really feel like you want to put your team member on there because they're going to tell the truth, you can put it on there, but HR will still just need to confirm. It's the safest bet. You can also just say references for later. You don't have to put your references up on your CV straight up. They don't have to be there. Especially if you just job seeking and your boss does not know, you don't want to put yourself in that risk where someone calls up and says, hey, just wanted to know, and then you've got that situation. So keep it for later, keep it into HR, and it should be fine. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that really does help because I think sometimes you do have a boss who would genuinely want you to do better and who actually has great things to say about you. But I think at that time, you don't want them really to alarm them that you're job seeking. So definitely that last bit of just the references till a later stage, I think that's really great advice. Okay, and we've got a question that came through. Any advice for recruiters specifically during this pandemic?
For recruiters, Greg Savage is your friend. Go and connect to him. He's got amazing books on there. Also, be sure to join guys like the Recruit Shoppers on Facebook. They are a community of recruiters who are there to support and help each other through this pandemic. People like Vanessa and Jane do a phenomenal podcast called Collaborate to Navigate. It's a weekly touch base with all the recruiters, and it's focused on helping people through this pandemic. How do we keep small businesses profitable? Because a lot of the smaller guys have been hit quite badly. A lot of the bigger guys have been hit quite badly, but they're awesome. I also personally love the work that Katrina Collier is doing around, being a robot-proof recruiter. She's done absolutely awesome research into making sure that you keep that human connection with your candidates and that you're using technology in a way that benefits both parties equally. So there's a lot of support around there. the SourceCon guys and Amazing Hiring have partnered together to do free training for all recruiters currently impacted by COVID. And it is literally every single thing that you need to know to be a rock star recruiter. The platform's free. I think there's a lot of content out there, and I'd be very happy to also share a few links in terms of that.
Cool. Yes, definitely. We're looking forward to those links. And I think this particular question comes from one of our Cooking Hills mentors. And she's saying that how can we assist in incorporating what we've just discussed, right? This entire engagement with our young girls that we're actually mentoring to be better prepared for the new job scene. So we've got girls from grade 8 all the way going to matric. And I think we're just trying to figure out how can we, because it's a constantly changing job scene. So there's that we as their mentors also have to sort of prepare them for. So how can this particular conversation work for us as their mentors to actually help them be better for this job scene?
Look, it's obviously a world of change, and you guys are doing phenomenal work. It's actually exactly what South Africa needs at the moment. Yeah. In general, it's what the world needs. Because, I mean, when we were kids, and I can probably only speak for myself, but my parents were very adamant you do things like you become a teacher or a nurse or a lawyer, because that was what they thought were going to be jobs of the future, right? They didn't know that this was going to be good, where we go. I think enforcing this principle that STEM is for everybody is phenomenal. Keep encouraging that curiosity, this passion. And our knowledge is a blessing and a curse a little bit, because we sometimes go in with our own life experience and sort of try and influence that. But encourage everybody that you encounter with to be curious, and your passion sort of flows into that. Definitely. We are blessed in the sense that we have all of these tools to keep learning and to keep knowing. And having these kids involved in projects quite early on in their lives will probably mean that by the time that they finish school, they know way more than we ever did and ever thought we were going to do. It's really cool in that sense. But stay abreast within the industry. Make sure that, if there's an event to be part of, have them be part of it. I know that a lot of the development community is really passionate about this as well. People like Buhaki Cindy, he works within the Java space. He's doing a Java boot camp for kids from all ages. So these things are going to come up more and more, and just keep fostering that passion. I think last year around June, I approached and hired a colleague. He's now been with us for a while. He grew up in rural Limpopo, and the only computer in the town was the local library's computer. And someone threw out an old Java textbook. And I mean, he as a little 14-year-old found the textbook and started studying. And at that stage, his family needed money. So he went onto the laptop, the PC at the public library, put up an ad on Gumtree to say that he could code websites. And every time someone would reach out to him, he would say, okay, I don't know how to do this, but let me go and learn. And he'd take 2 weeks and go and learn. And throughout this limited framework of time that he had, he taught himself how to do that. And he is absolutely smashing it now. I mean, he's one of the developers within a really big investment project, and never finished his matric, never finished a degree, but is just through his own curiosity and that passion, that hunger to succeed, like that, if you could foster that within anybody, like, it's amazing. And there's always going to be opportunity within that space, No,
it's cool. Definitely. All right, Anene. I'm inspired by everything that you just said.
You're sweet. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Thank you so much. I think we've answered all the questions that we got on our platform. And and thank you so much for actually heeding to the call and coming here and imparting all that knowledge that you have. I think that for everybody who's watching, and because this is going to be on our YouTube page for those who couldn't watch it live, everybody that will watch, I know, will actually find so much value in this. So thank you so much. And so we'll keep posting the links, right? The links to all the articles and all the nice things that you actually want to leave for us as well. So thank you so much to everybody who actually tuned in. Thank you to all our subscribers as well. We want to keep these conversations going, and it's always best to hear from the youth, so to actually advise the youth, you know. So thank you so much to everybody who tuned in, and see you in our next segment. Bye.
Okay. Bye. Thank you.